Okay, that's set up. Hello. Live stream isn't available right now. Of course it is. Of course it is. It literally says we're live. Ah, that's why. That's why. Nice. Do we got this? Okay, that's working. Whoops, I forgot. Oh, that was a little typo there. Shoot. Nice. Do we got this? Okay, that's working. Start immediately, start later, advanced settings. No, don't need a replay buffer. Nice. Okay, that should be good. We will double check to make sure all the chats are working. We got to say yo there. We're going to go yo and kick. And then we'll go over to the X chat as well. Oh yeah, this is cool. Nice, it actually worked. Hey, 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. I just gotta go grab a drink of water. Okay, I'm just curious what that worked. Okay, now I suppose we'll just see if we get a copyright strike on the live stream. Hello, good morning, everyone. We're live on YouTube, Kick, and Twitch, and on X now. Look at this. Close the calculator. Ah, no way. The water cooler in the kitchen is beeping. All right, let's see some of these new YouTube comments, shall we? Do I have anything incriminating to hide here? Of course not. Let's go. Yeah, browser audio should be working. Thank you. Reviewing your YouTube channel, CEO. LOL later. Yeah, Twitch is having some big stability issues right now. Whoa, this is actually huge. So all of OTK is joining Kick to launch Kick Studios. There's a little bit of a... What's this here? Okay, all of OTK is joining Kick to help launch Kick Studios. Tips out, wrong. OTK is producing content and some events for Kick. Those select events. Either way, it doesn't really matter. What are these people? Every OTK member joining Kick equals is not equal producer their few has a Kick. When you partner with someone, a lot of times it can be called joining. What the OP said wasn't wrong. Y'all just being semantic. Okay, whatever. No hate, but the ones I've seen multi-stream so far seem to be just farming the KPP payments while ignoring the Kick chat. Hope they help build up Kick and not just ride out the payroll. Fair evaluation from that person. I mean, BB Jess, she's been around a Kick for a while. I would trust her opinion more than others. Interesting, very, very interesting. Kick and One True King, OTK, strike content partnership to produce premium live stream events. Deal marks the launch of Kick Studios. This deal marks the launch of Kick Studios, built to facilitate and empower authentic creator content. Whoops, undo repost. Let's quote this. What do we want to say something about like Bleeding Purple and Twitch fans, you know, diversify like any career investment, you know, creators also need to diversify their sure. Whoops, that's career. Like any career investment, creators also need to diversify their portfolio. I've added Kick streaming to my and love the community there. Ooh, I should actually go and just take my talking about this live. Yeah. Where was it? Interesting. Super interesting. All right. I like it. I like it. Let's just close a couple windows here. Keep the brand strategy outboard. Keep Premiere open. ASQ batch. We'll leave that. Full 2. We had a couple comments on YouTube. Let's check those out, shall we? Why are we so zoomed in? Do this first. The first thing you need to do with your new bike, we could potentially watch that a little bit later. We are picking up a new bike. Yeah, YouTube Studio. Whoa, I think we got a new sub last night. Let's go. Reach on X is terrible. Oh my goodness. These are going down, 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 down. Now you can manage viewer posts in your community. I think I have viewer posts turned off. Wavelength system does not appear under my playback. Do you know any way to troubleshoot this? I see wavelength music and wavelength aspects. What is going on outside? Wavelength system does not appear in my playback. Have you tried looking in your Windows advanced sound settings? The nerve of some people. They don't even ask, they ask questions and they don't even sub. Are you on Windows 10 or 11? Have you tried looking in your Windows Advanced Sound settings? Not talking. I'm not talking about the old control panel, but, you know, see what he says. See what he says. Dashboard, content. Yeah, maybe they need captions. Maybe that's why these past few just aren't very good. Liquid ass. Yeah, yeah. There are a couple YouTube videos I want to check out. There's a new camera cart from Small Rig. This was a trending video that popped up on my Google feed about a fellow starting his own company. I do want to watch this Switch 2 video while we're here. And yeah. If we go to earn and copyright. Oh wow, not bad. Actually, just want to check something really quick. $1,024. How did I lose watch hours? That's weird. That is super strange. Super, super strange. chameleon frame. Yeah, we'll keep this open. We are getting a new bike. We just can't decide whether we need the XL or the large. We are right on that threshold because I'm like 6'1.5". Just don't know what the right answer is. Do we go with a large bike and be in the upper end of the threshold, or do we go with the extra large bike and be on the lower end? I don't know. I don't know. These are the things that Derek thinks about. Reject all. I don't want your cookies. Get out of here.
Do you have a brand new bike? Congratulations! A bicycle can truly be a life-changing purchase, but there's a few things you should do to it to get the most out of it. Oh, and if your bike isn't new, this might still be helpful, so stay tuned. Number 1, check those tire pressures. Tire setup can completely transform how your bike feels to ride. This applies to almost every bicycle available, unless your bike has solid tires, but there's a reason those aren't a popular choice. Whether the bike's been on a Walmart shelf or in a cardboard box on the way to you, the tires have probably lost some pressure and need to be inflated. This is ideally done with a pump with a pressure gauge on it. If you're in a shop that sells bikes, ask to borrow one. If you're at home and you need one, maybe ask a friend to borrow one. Or if you can, buy yourself a hand pump or a floor pump with a pressure gauge included. I'd recommend when you go riding that you always have a mini pump or a hand pump on you. So it's probably a wise thing to purchase first. Your tires will have printed on the side a recommended pressure range in PSI or bar.
100 PSI?
Inflate to that pressure and your bike's going to feel its best. You'll also avoid things like pinch punches, annoying punches that happen when you don't run enough pressure and the wheel rim impacts the inner tube when you hit bumps. As I mentioned earlier on, tires lose a little bit of pressure over time, so I always check them before I ride. Number 2, torque those bolts. Torque is the measure of force you apply to a bolt, and if you don't tighten the bolts on your bike to the correct torque, they could come loose and your bike will fall apart. That's bad. You could also over-tighten them and your bolts will explode, or you'll break your components, which is also bad. If a bike shop sold you your bike, it's their responsibility to make sure this is done. But there's no harm in asking them to make double sure. If you bought your bike online, you'll have to build the bike and check the torque settings yourself. To do this, you need a tool called a torque wrench. Sometimes bikes will be delivered with a basic torque wrench, sometimes not.
Oh, interesting.
You can find
okay, I
basic
wonder
torque
if mine
wrenches
does.
for not too much money, but generally, the more you spend, the more accurate they're going to be. Perhaps ask around, ask your friends to see if you can borrow one to start you off. Check for markings near your seat clamp, stem, and printed on the end of your throw axles.
That's cool how they have the
bolts should
Newton
be
meters,
tightened.
inch pounds, foot pounds, same thing.
Where your handlebars and stem
Same,
are fitted
but
to the
different.
bike, be sure to tighten the preload bolt on the top to the point where there's no play before tightening the 2 bolts to tighten the stem to the steerer. This information will apply to most modern bikes, but there is every chance that you have something slightly different, so always check your instruction manuals. Number 3, get that saddle level. Most saddles work best when they're set up parallel to the ground. If they're set up pointing down, gravity means you'll end up sliding to the end, sitting on the nose where there isn't very much support. If it's set nose up, then you end up posteriorly rotating your pelvis, which means it feels like a longer reach to the handlebars, creates other issues as well. Of course, there's going to be exceptions, but for most people, starting off with your saddle level is a good shout. You can try and get it level by eye, or use a long spirit level over the 2 highest points. This applies to most modern saddles. Some of them with more funky shapes will be exceptions. If you're still uncomfortable and your saddle is level, try reducing your saddle height slightly. If you're still uncomfortable, try changing the saddle. First stop would be one with a nice big pressure relief channel in the middle. Number 4, bar and lever rotation. Now, this one is a little bit more advanced and applies to most drop handlebar bicycles. I don't know who they've got setting up the bikes in these factories, but bikes notoriously arrive with handlebars and levers set up incorrectly. Thankfully, it's a relatively easy thing to fix as long as you're confident rewrapping your bar tape. First, we want to get the end of the drop handlebar perpendicular to the ground. Just by doing this by eye is fine. Step 1, loosen your stem bolt slightly at the front of the handlebar so the bar can move slightly. Rotate the bar to achieve the desired rotation and refasten the stem bolts, ideally with a torque wrench, and tightening each one incrementally and evenly. Now we've got the bar rotation perfect, have a look at the position of your levers.
Those are
There's an element
nice.
of personal preference here, but generally speaking, you want to get the flat part of the lever, where your hand sits, to be slightly tilted back from parallel to the ground. If you do have them set up parallel to the ground or tilted forwards, it usually causes people to roll their wrists forward, creating tension in your arms, neck, and shoulders, leading to discomfort. It also puts your levers further away, so they are harder to reach. To adjust them, unwrap your bar tape, Hopefully it comes off neatly. Some bar tapes are stickier than others and fall apart. Stop once you've gone past the lever. Pull back the rubber of the lever hood and find usually a 5mm Allen key bolt. Loosen this bolt and you'll be able to wiggle the shifter into its new position and retighten the bolt. You can also adjust the angle of the lever left and right at this point if you so wish.
I don't know,
Rewrap
my
the bar
bike's
tape,
not like this,
probably
so
use some
it'll
new
be fine.
electrical tape to keep things looking neat, and jobs are good. Number 5. Another one for drop bar bikes here, lever reach adjustment. Now the vast majority
Yeah, we don't
of
have
levers
I don't have a drop
usually
bike.
involves peeling back the rubber hood. With a worn out chain, you're going to start wearing out your chain rings, you're going to start wearing out your jockey wheels, and you're going to start wearing out your cassette, which added up becomes very expensive. Changing a chain before it gets too worn out can extend the lifespan of your other components massively. So let's check your chain wear before you start riding. To do this, you need a chain checker. Thankfully, these are really cheap. It drops down between the links of your chain and falls all the way through if your chain is worn out. Different brands and different speeds of chain have different levels of wear before they need to be changed. So again, check your manufacturer's instruction manuals. Is there anything else that you would do to a brand new bike?
Sure, interesting. Okay. Now, I really like small rig equipment. I've got tripods, little phone mounts, the magic arms. So I'm curious to see what this new cart is that they're making here. Next Gen Production, introducing the video production camera cart. Let's check this out. Okay, so right out of the gate, I like that how it has wheels. There's something I really dislike is when you have to manually lug so much gear around, and it even means that because it has wheels, it can probably stand up on itself too. And what do you know? We get more wheels. Okay, that's pretty easy. That pops up. Those are quick release. Quick release on and off. Okay. Some friction arms to clamp the side post. And there we go. There's your little tool cart. Look at my boy's ready to go. He's got his V-mount batteries, the display, the camera rig, the gaff tape. Look at that. I remember filming a commercial for an oil field company, and they had an upstairs where the office was, and then the lower portion was the shop where everyone was working. And this cart would have been so handy, not only to take the gear from the back of the truck into the shop, but then to be able to put the gear on this cart and bring it into the lift elevator to bring it upstairs. My goodness, this would have been so handy. What? You can mount light posts on the corner? What is this? The pack up tutorial? Okay. I'd be a little bit concerned just looking at if any of this stuff would be rolling around and making a lot of noise. Like if you actually had to bring this with you on a bus or a plane, for example, is stuff going to get damaged in here? I'd hope not. Everything goes back nicely and contained. Not bad. Does it say how much it weighs? Small rig, co-designed with... Hey, nice. Well, Wonder if we're going to get one to test. That'd be cool. I started a business in my garage, then it blew up. Okay, what the Trash Panda disc golf? I don't know. Is this going to be clickbait?
Story of how an idea I had in my garage back in 2020 blew up into this. So almost exactly 5 years ago on the day, I thought to myself, I'll make a disc out of recycled plastic in my garage. How hard could it be? Turns out, it was really hard. At that point, I'd been playing disc golf for about 12 years. And there wasn't a specific moment, but I just remember the whole time thinking to myself, like, we're outside, we're throwing plastic discs. Where's the recycled plastic? So naturally,
True.
as anyone would do, I did nothing about it for over a decade. And then finally, I just thought, okay, if I want this to be a thing, I guess it's gonna be me.
Hi, my name is Jesse from Trash Panda, and I'm currently making a fully recycled disc. In part 1 of this series, I need to learn to weld. I need to weld because I need to be able to make the tools that I need to recycle plastic. One is a shredder, the other is an injection machine.
At that point, there weren't any videos about how discs are made. So I can't remember if I knew about it or if just by luck, I remember thinking like, okay, I must need an injection machine. And if I'm gonna build an injection machine, then I need to know how to weld. So I literally started 5 years ago by teaching myself how to weld.
Well, I think it's one of those things where you just get it or you don't.
Purely naive of me, but I genuinely thought I would make a disc in that first like month or two. Like I thought it was gonna be so quick that I would make a disc, but it turned out to take 6 months just to build the right injection machine, which took 3 iterations, and then to make the right mold, which took 2 iterations. But after 6 months, I finally had that first product, and it felt like trash. I never thought I would be so proud of something that felt so truly bad.
Hey, you
But
created something that's
every time I
trash,
held
but
it,
you
I
love
just-
it. It's
I
your little
felt like
baby.
something was happening. Around the same time, I also needed to find recycled plastic because I was making it out of recycled plastic. And it was surprisingly difficult knowing how much plastic is out there. But I tried 2 things at first. One is I built a shredder that ended up being the worst shredder ever. And then I also bought 200 pounds of recycled plastic on eBay. And I thought at the time when I bought that plastic, it was the most plastic ever. Like I was like, I'll never see more plastic than this. At that point, I still kind of thought that all plastics were pretty similar. So I remember thinking, okay, a Tide detergent bottle feels like kind of flexible and kind of grippy. And a disc needs to be kind of flexible and kind of grippy. That was the first moment I learned that plastics are actually engineered for specific use cases. Like that plastic was called HDPE, and it made a great detergent bottle or a great
milk
bottle
jugs
cap,
and stuff like that.
but it made a horrible disc. Little did I know at this point that that was kind of the introduction, like plastics manufacturing 101 for me. But beyond learning about plastics and how complicated plastics are, the process of making a disc in my garage, complex would be an understatement. It genuinely took 30 minutes to make a single disc, which is crazy to think back on. I would open up the barrel, pour plastic inside, let it melt, put the plunger back on top of the barrel, hang on the barrel for way too much time as it would inject into this mold. Then I would let the disc cool in the mold for a certain amount of time, and I would pull the plunger back out of the barrel, which was sneakily the hardest part of the entire process, just to load up the next shot to be ready 15 minutes later. Then while the plastic was sitting melting in the machine for the next injection, I would take the mold apart, take the disc out, inspect my work, which 90% of the time was not very good, put the mold back together, and get ready for the next injection. Late 2020, early 2021, I had my first video kind of pop off on YouTube. And from that, this random guy messaged me and was like, hey, if I build a mold for you, would you make me a disc out of it? And up until that point, making a mold was like the hardest part of the thing. So I told him I'd actually been thinking about making another mold for disc golf minis, which is another product in the sport that is not a performance-based product at all. So I basically asked him, what if we made the mini mold first, and then we'll make the disc mold after that? He said yes, we made the mold, and I made a YouTube video about him saying like, hey, these things are now here. If you want to buy one, they're available. And I remember so vividly having to close orders at 3 hours because I'd sold 1,000 minis. And every single one was made to order.
One down, 999 more to go. Whew.
So over the next full month and a half, I made mini after mini in my garage, just hanging on the machine day in, day out with one mini mold. So I totally forgot this. This is right after we hit 10,000 subscribers, then Earth Day, and then after 1,000 minis ordered, I've made the decision to officially close mini orders for now. BRB making 1,000 minis. It was probably such a big deal to me at that point that I had to close the orders. Okay, so we made 1,000 minis, and then, yep, 3 minutes. Sold out in 3 minutes on the second one. On the third drop that sold out in I think an hour, we hit a mini officially in every state in the US, all 50 states. 2021 was a blur because myself and another guy in my garage made over 5,000 minis. And I remember just the whole time, outside of thinking about how tired I was physically, thinking about how are we going to be able to keep up with production on discs if this is what it's like for me. And so PU was used in skateboard wheels, and TPU is just thermoplastic polyurethane. After another, all with a looming launch date that I had already told the public about. Way too late in the game. Like, that's 2 days before the launch party. But I was like, free of this table, and it had this like gap in it.
Too much yapping.
That I was literally able to set up this contraption where we would just cut the exact slices of paper that we needed. There's a thing called a paper cutter. You can buy it. You don't need to find a table on the side of the road. But you can also do that too. It just felt so real at this point. Like, we weren't in my garage anymore, we were in a warehouse. It wasn't just me anymore, we were a we, because our first few full-time employees had started. We were starting to really like do the thing, and by the time we were ready to release our second disc, the Dune, we weren't even fitting into the warehouse that we were in, and we had to move. That was the first time we got pallet racking. Never thought I'd own pallet racking. We also...
What did that sign say? Good for your game, great for the planet. Oh, cool.
Racking. We also needed access to a forklift because we started to get really big deliveries of packaging materials and recycled plastic, discs to recycle. Oh my gosh, at that point we were literally like digging through these massive cardboard boxes, recycling plastic that was mixed with like Coke cans and metal and a tortilla. What now looking back, I can see we were learning that whole time was a lesson called why people don't use 100% recycled plastic. Everything in injection molding is built for consistency. The plastic is in this perfect little pellet that looks like a Dippin' Dot, and it's a
Okay.
totally consistent size across the board. These massive injection machines are designed so that you can edit the parameters on the smallest of scales to design a perfect process. And then the molds are literally built with water lines and all kinds of components that make it so you can have 100% consistency across the board. But the second you put 100% recycled plastic into the machine, you just throw all of that out. So we were working with a local injection molding company who was awesome. Trash Panda would not exist today, period, full stop, no matter what, without them. But our goal at Trash Panda of making 100% recycled disc was something that we would do no matter what, even if it increased our costs, which it did, even if it increases our problems, even if fill in the blank, no matter what, we would do it. And at the end of the day, that's just not what another company's goal is. So we got our first injection machine. The day our injection machine showed up is a day I don't think I'll ever forget.
Got the 4:3 aspect ratio. Whoa, look at that skid. That's always the hardest part about getting equipment, is actually bringing it into your house or your shop. Warehouse, garage, real house.
So the machine got hooked up to power, and we hooked it up to water and air and everything like that. And the company sent someone out to do a startup. And it was called a startup and training. And we had different expectations than we should have about the words training. Basically, by the time that guy left, it was clear that the machine was working just fine, and that these two guys right here, AKA me and Kyle, had no idea still how to run it. So we just committed the next 2 months to spend every single day learning how.
You live, Dad? Oh, noob. Yep. Show me. This actually looks... Oh, so we're making discs.
I just remember sitting back and looking at two groups of people
That's hilarious.
and realizing this is not a company that's made possible because of what I've done, but because of what they've done. On one hand, it was our team, and then the people, you. And maybe it was just seeing all the people, or my naive belief in how much what we're doing is just worth it. But I never really talked about this before. Right before we got this machine, literally 2 days before it showed up, I applied for a grant from the state of Colorado for our second machine.
Oh, okay.
And I don't remember exactly when. Probably 2 months after we got this machine, I got the news that we got it. So this is the first machine, and this is our second machine. And they probably look the same. They're very close to the same. But in the window of time we had between when we were awarded the grant and when we were able to actually get the machine, we started to realize that we were going to need to move again because we were outgrowing our old spot. And I think if there's anything the team would tell you is like the bane of our existence, it's moving.
Yeah.
We just
I
have
don't
moved
disagree.
too many times. But I think we spent 3, maybe 4 months touring warehouses. I can't tell you how many grow houses we went to. Facilities full of 110 outlets. How many like weird spots we saw that just did not fit our needs at all. But eventually we whittled it down to 2 spots. This one and a different one. And actually this one was on like an early set of listings that our realtor sent us. And we were like, no, we don't need to see that one, which is hilarious. But we were between the 2 and we ended up choosing this one, which now I'm like, I can't believe we were ever even thinking about the other one.
No kidding.
So today we are a kindergartner. We're turning 5 and we have a team of people who are making everything happen. Tom is running all of our marketing and branding, and he's the reason that everything we do looks insane. Kelly is running our experience, which is anything from shipping and fulfilling to events to customer service questions, whether they be hundreds of emails daily or DMs. I still can't believe we get DMs about order questions. So
That's funny. Good for
if
this
you're
guy.
on Instagram, just send a message that's like, hey, Kelly, hope you're doing well today. I know she'd appreciate that. Kyle, who most people on YouTube know at this point, is the one who runs our manufacturing. He is day in, day out, making sure that plastic is getting ground up, discs are being made, processes are being developed, and every once in a while, much to my chagrin, he's beating me on the course. There's also another Kyle who works on the experience side of things, making sure that things are getting ghost stamped or that every order is getting out the door. He actually just had a kid.
Wonder what ghost stamping
he's
is.
just coming back with us actually tomorrow when I'm filming this from his paternity leave. So we're really excited about that. If you're tracking at this point, you'd probably also know that with 2 machines, we need 2 people, which means there's also Matt, who's the most recent addition to the team. And he literally,
Well, that's kind of cool. This
think
video
I
is a little
mean
bit
it in a
longer. Lots of yapping, but I appreciate it. That's cool. I like to always see these come up stories of how other people do their build their businesses and define their brands.
Have you ever wondered what 200 people in a garage looks like? Well, tomorrow you're going to find out. We're doing an event in the first garage suite in all of Red Deer. We're actually going to be in the yard, but you can still tour the garage suite. We start at 6 o'clock. Address is in the Facebook link here. Have you ever wondered
Oh,
what
that's
200
it? Oh, I thought I was going to show something. Never mind.
Switch 2 is out, and honestly, I wish I could say I was excited. I really, really wanted to be excited. Like many 90s babies, I grew up on Nintendo. They were
Hell
my
yeah.
very first gaming love. And not just the games, but the feeling of them. The wonder, the warmth, the way they pulled you into a world and made it feel like home. Ocarina of Time was the one that really awoke something in me. That opening in Kokiri Forest with the Deku Tree, riding Epona across Hyrule Field, it all felt so massive. Like a real world was tucked inside a little cartridge. And then Majora's Mask came along, and my little self had never
I don't
felt
think I
such
played
anxiety.
these 2
That
games.
eerie
I
moon,
heard of them,
the
of
ticking
course, but
clock,
don't remember
the
playing them.
emotional side quests that made you care so much in so little time. It was the very first game that made me feel something beyond just fun. It was sad, confusing, kind of strange at times, and very deep. It wasn't just Zelda. I was obsessed with Super Mario 64, running wild through Peach's castle, jumping into paintings, discovering
Of
every
course,
secret
yeah.
star. That game felt
Do
like
you guys
true freedom.
remember
And
Spyro the Dragon? I played Spyro. That was a PlayStation game, but it felt like a reskin a little bit of like Mario 64, but so good. I love Spyro.
Then there were classics like Kirby's Dream Land, Yoshi's Story, Donkey Kong 64, Star Fox, Metroid Prime, all completely different and wonderful in their own way. And every one of them had a vibe, a soul, that Nintendo spark that made it feel like you weren't just playing, you were being let in on something very special. And then my parents bought me the original DS, and just like that,
Oh,
the whole thing was cracked
yeah.
wide open for me. That's how I found Animal Crossing Wild World world, and I was hooked. I spent hours in that little village, rearranging furniture, writing letters, fishing for red snappers, and visiting my best friend's town during our weekly sleepovers. Even now, just hearing the soundtrack makes me very emotional. It takes me right back to those quiet, cozy afternoons after school, all curled up with that clunky silver DS with nowhere else that I needed to be. Truly, the
DS was
epitome of
kind of
nostalgia.
clunky,
I
hey?
didn't know it then, but those
Awkward
games
angles.
were helping to shape how I saw everything. Stories, characters, even myself. And for a while, it really felt like Nintendo understood how to make something that mattered. And it didn't stop there. I basically owned every major Nintendo console, starting with the N64, GameCube, Wii, DS, 3DS, even the Wii U, which, in my humble opinion, was ahead of its time, by the way. But I owned all of them. And when the Switch was announced with Breath of the Wild, I was beyond excited. Like, very cringely crying at the announcement trailer excited. As a Zelda fan, it was everything I'd ever wanted
Nice.
in a game, and to this day, it is still one of my favorites. That launch brought back so much of the old magic, which is probably why I held on for so long, and I even wanted to work for them. Like, genuinely. I applied to corporate Nintendo PR jobs probably 15 to 20 times. I'm not even exaggerating. Back in 2019, I was pursuing PR, and when I got the opportunity to go to E3 that year, the very last E3, by the way, I actually spoke with a Nintendo
Oh,
PR
that's
team in
right.
person.
E3 is no more.
The Nintendo section of the event was so overwhelming and electric, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what I want, and this is what I want to be a part of. So please, hear me out. What we are about to discuss isn't coming from someone who's out to bash Nintendo. This is coming from someone who genuinely, wholeheartedly, even at times very cringely, loved Nintendo and their games, and really believed in what I thought they stood for. But over time, I've started to realize that maybe Nintendo isn't the company I thought they were. What I've seen over the last few years is that my nostalgia goggles have been working overtime, and they've kept me from really seeing the true nature of a company that I once held so dear to my heart. So, let's dive in. And let's start with the release of the Switch 2. It's officially out now, and sales are booming. Records are being broken, and over 3 million units were sold worldwide on release day. People are also loving Mario Kart World, and I'm genuinely very happy for them. Yes, the game looks like a lot of fun. I
does.
just wish I felt something, because more than anything, I just feel tired. At $450 or $500 if you get it bundled with Mario Kart World, this doesn't feel
And
like
keep in mind, this is like $850 Canadian. You're gonna push $1,000 CAD for a Switch 2, maybe an extra controller, a couple accessories in a game. Like, that's insane for any sort of investment into a one checkbox type of device like a Switch. You know, it's not like you're buying a laptop or a computer. $1,000? Come on.
celebration of the next chapter. It feels like Nintendo seeing how far they can stretch our loyalty, how much they can charge us for something that isn't
Yep.
even new, just a little bit newer. And listen, I'm not here to crap on Mario Kart. I actually really like Mario Kart. I do. It's one of those comfort games that's always been there, and it's attached to so many fond memories of playing with friends and family. But even though it looks fun, when that's the flagship title for a brand new console launch, I don't know, I personally just couldn't get behind the hype. It feels kind of boring, safe, predictable. Nintendo isn't asking, hey, what's possible here? They're asking, what can we get away with? Because $80 for Mario Kart World, that's not just a new number. It's a shift in how this industry treats its players. And what surprises me, even though it shouldn't at this point, is that it's Nintendo, of all companies, ushering in this new pricing standard. This wasn't them reluctantly following a trend that I know was inevitable, but this was them leading the charge, setting a precedent, establishing $80 as the new normal, and not with some expansive, genre-pushing new experience, but with an exact game formula that we've literally seen 16 times at this point. And it makes you ask, why? Because meanwhile, I'm looking at games like Helldivers 2, Hi-Fi Rush, Lies of P, Remnant 2, Clair Obscur, Baldur's Gate 3, and so many more. Games that have real creative vision, some with massive campaigns, even some with fleshed out co-op systems, launching at or below $60. And many of these games are taking risks and really pushing boundaries, and somehow they're still
And
finding a
breaking the
way to be
mold of
more
what
accessible. So when
games
Nintendo
used to
drops
be.
a new
Indie games
console
are gonna
and
be
leads with
popping off
yet
over the next
another
few
Mario
years.
Kart at a higher price than ever before, it doesn't feel like they're honoring their legacy. It feels like they're monetizing it, like they're using it against us. Actually kind of feels like a slap in the face that stings pretty badly. And yes, to be fair, the Switch 2 is a technical upgrade. 4K visuals, better battery, smoother performance, more storage, it's all technically better.
Let's look at this here. I'm not too familiar with the ARM processors, but we got the ×4, and then instead of the ×8, or vice versa. Only a Switch 1. Is this literally saying that it's a little bit slower as far as CPU clock speeds go? 2 cores, 16 available to developers. What? Ampere, Maxwell, CUDA cores. Okay. Memory, 128-bit.
Okay,
I have no
visuals, better
comment. That
battery,
seems
smoother
whack.
performance, more storage, it's all technically better on paper, but it doesn't feel like a new era. It seems like a slightly fancier version of something that we already had. And for me personally, this realization of who Nintendo is not like a sudden moment of awakening. I've quietly been stepping back from them for a while now. And not because I stopped loving their games, but because I started seeing the patterns, the choices, and the shifts. And at this point, it's pretty clear that this Switch 2 release is not just about a new price tag or a genuine attempt at launching something new, it's just another step in the same pattern that's been repeating for years. Back in the day, this used to be the company that took risks, that made
Super
magic,
Mario
that
World, look
redefined
at that.
entire genres and invited us into something truly special. But now, kind of just seems like they're relying on
Is
the
this
fact
Mr.
that we'll
Nintendo
show
right
up
here?
no matter what, even though they are so often very anti-consumer. It's because they know our nostalgia runs incredibly deep, and the more I've seen it, the harder it has been to unsee. Nintendo has mastered something I can only describe as weaponized nostalgia. They've turned our childhood memories into a soulless business model, and the part that really hurts is that it works. It worked on me for so long. I've been the Nintendo fangirl who's bought the remakes, re-releases, and updated ports, even though I knew deep down that what they were offering was not anything new. And looking back on it, I don't know, I guess it was because I didn't feel like I was buying a game. It felt like I was buying a memory. And Nintendo knows that. They know that we remember how it felt to blast.
I kind of felt the same way when I bought the PS5. There was a lot of there was a lot of hype around the console. I hadn't seen one in a number of years. And even myself, I was thinking back to playing Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid and Gran Turismo. But the moment I turned on my PS5, it was like the hype meter just dropped in the matter of minutes. I just didn't feel like playing it anymore, and I wanted to go back to my computer. I do think that they're monetizing some of the nostalgia that people have with these old consoles. Like, I'm not saying that they don't make good games, but they really do market to the old memories that a lot of the people that grew up with these consoles were playing. That's all I'm trying to say.
Through Alien Worlds and Metroid Prime, or how it felt to spend hours raising your perfect Nintendog like it was your actual childhood pet. They know we feel these titles in a way that goes beyond gameplay, and they have perfected the art of re-releasing titles, sometimes only mildly updated, at full price, locking legacy content behind paywalls and subscriptions, and offering nostalgia not as a gift, but as a heartless transaction. And just a quick side note that I found out while I was writing out this video. Do you want to talk about heartless? Because I just found out that Nintendo actually replaced the voice actress for Princess Peach after 18 years. And they didn't even tell her. She found out with the rest of the world when the new Mario Kart game came out.
What?
That's actually insane. But anyway, to get back on track, there's always been a huge difference between celebrating fan love and exploiting it. And for me, it seems like Nintendo has lived long enough to finally see themselves become the villain. So moving on from the Switch 2 release, at some point, I started looking at how Nintendo treats the people who love their games. And what I found honestly broke my heart a little bit, because Nintendo doesn't just protect its legacy, they police it. Let's start with content creators. This is
What do they
nothing
mean
new.
by that?
For many years now, Nintendo has been going after them. Streamers, YouTubers, musicians, for doing what, honestly, most other gaming companies celebrate, sharing their love for the brand and its IP.
Yeah.
Somehow I managed to
I just received a copyright takedown on my account suspended for 48 hours of streaming Age of Calamity, despite it being out for Australia, Japan, part of Europe, and all of Europe in 30 minutes.
Trying to turn a blind eye to most of this until the Point Crow situation. He was a YouTuber who was making these really incredible Breath of the Wild mod videos. Fun, creative, and totally original. And then one day, Nintendo claimed and struck 27 videos. No warning, no conversation, just straight up attacked. And it wasn't just his Breath of the Wild mods, it was any content that featured them, including other creators who had collaborated with him. It all got wiped out like a purge. And it made me pause because these weren't leaks and they weren't made to be malicious. It really was just fan content that was made out of love. And Nintendo really cracked down on it like it was a threat. And this was not an isolated case. One that has really stuck with me was Gilvasunner. And if you didn't know, Gilvasunner's channel used to be one of the only places online where you could find full Nintendo soundtracks. For years, Nintendo basically had these locked up very tight unless you were able to purchase a physical CD from Nintendo themselves. They weren't on Spotify, Apple Music, Nintendo's YouTube channel, no official platform to listen to any of it. And Gilva wasn't even trying to profit from this. There were no ads or monetization, just the original music uploaded for fans who wanted.
Hi everyone, after 1,300 copyright blocks from Nintendo a few days ago, the new YouTube channel received another 2,200 blocks today, with likely many more to follow. After thinking about this a lot over the past few days, I've decided at this point it's really not worth it to keep the channel up any longer. I will therefore delete Gilva's Sunny YouTube channel, or what's left of it anyway, this coming Friday. Wow.
Wanted to relive the moments those songs came from. It was really a gift to the community, and then it was gone. Nintendo initially sent over 1,300 takedown notices, and after that, it was followed by another 2,200. The entire channel was essentially wiped out, and Gilva closed up shop. And I know this might sound a little bit dramatic, but that was kind of a big turning point for me when it came to how I viewed them. Just a little side note / confession, but as a former Disney adult who has learned the error of her ways, I feel pretty qualified to say this. Nintendo really is the Disney of gaming. They're wholesome on the surface, very full of magic and memories, but underneath, there's a very quiet, corporate, malicious control. And both companies know how to tug at your childhood heartstrings while handing out copyright strikes and ulterior motives on the side. At the time I was watching this unfold, the more I sat with what happened to Gilvasunner, the more it made me wonder, why is Nintendo's music so locked away to begin with? These soundtracks have some of the most iconic songs in gaming. They were emotional, timeless, and they were very deeply personal for so many of us. And like I said earlier, Animal Crossing Wild World was my comfort game. And yet, at the time, there was basically no way for me to go listen to it legally. It felt like Nintendo had locked away their history in a vault, and they just would not let anyone open it up. And from there, I started noticing so many other examples. Fan games getting shut down, community passion projects being wiped out, and listen, I get it, IP protection is legally within their right, but it all just felt like they were going out of their way to crack down on this, acting very aggressive, cold, and even heartless. Especially when you look around at many other companies, Sega, Capcom, Xbox, PlayStation, even some indie studios, and you see them amplifying creators, lifting them up, letting the fans be a part of the legacy. But Nintendo doesn't really do that. They continue to pull the plug again and again, and over time, I started wondering if maybe I had just been giving them the benefit of the doubt simply because I grew up loving them. So at this point, after the Gilvasunner takedown, I had already started to feel uneasy. The creator takedowns, the fan projects, the legacy content, it was all feeling a lot more controlling than caring. But the moment that truly stopped me in my tracks was when I heard the story of Gary Bowser. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know about any of this until I listened to an episode of Darknet Diaries, which, by the way, Jack does an incredible job explaining all of this. I'll link it in the description for you. Now, I obviously knew at this point Nintendo could be very protective of their IP, but this was on a whole other level. Gary was a part of a group called Team Executor, and what they did was build and sell mod chips, little pieces of hardware that you could install in your Nintendo consoles to run homebrew apps, custom firmware, and yes, pirated games. But people also use those mods for stuff that wasn't necessarily piracy. They used it to run backups of games they already owned, or just experiment with the system for their own personal use, things that were really never going to be available through Nintendo directly. Gary essentially became the fall guy for the entire organization, and Nintendo came down on him in a way that was very extreme. In 2020, Gary was arrested at gunpoint in the Dominican Republic and extradited to the US. By 2022, 2, he'd been sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay $14.5 million in damages, $4.5 million in restitution, and then another $10 million from a civil suit. And after he got out early, he still owed all of it. And he started paying Nintendo back 25 to 30% of his monthly income, which at one point was just $25 a month from his prison library job. He'll basically be paying them for the rest of his life. When I heard that, my stomach dropped. I genuinely felt heartbroken for him. Yes, what he and the rest of the team were doing was illegal, and they did profit off of it, but Gary was just one man. And are we really saying the punishment fits the crime here? Because whatever legal lines were crossed, this felt less like justice and more like hatred and wrath. And not just for what he did, but for daring to even touch Nintendo's closed system. And the part that really got me with this is Nintendo tried to get Sony and Microsoft to back them up here, to join the lawsuit and make it a united front against piracy. Both companies said no. Both Sony and Xbox, billion-dollar publishers in their own right, refused to be a part of it. Even they seemed to think that it was too far. And again, I am not here to outright defend piracy, really. There's a whole conversation to be had about access, preservation, and ethics, but this felt incredibly cruel and predatory. Nintendo did not just want to stop Gary from what he was doing, they wanted to make him an example. And for me, this was the defining moment when I knew Nintendo was no longer the company that I had loved for decades. And if you thought Gary Bowser's case was just a one-off or a legal overreach in a rare situation, it wasn't. Because not long after that, Nintendo set its sights on something much bigger and arguably much more telling. You might have already guessed it, but I'm talking about Palworld. You probably remember when it blew up. A very weird, chaotic blend
Never played
of
the game, but I heard the drama about it.
And open world survival mechanics. It was very messy, it was wild, but it was so much fun. People were very obsessed, myself included. And yes, come on, it clearly was inspired by Pokemon. That's not a secret. You could throw a spear, you could collect little pals, you ride them, you battle them. It was Pokemon adjacent, absolutely. But here's the thing. It wasn't a copy. The characters were different. The art direction, tone, many mechanics were different. It took a very familiar genre.
Did anyone actually play
slightly
Palworld?
Unhinged twist. And for the first time in years, fans were saying, why doesn't Nintendo try stuff like this? Instead of taking that feedback in stride, instead of rising to the challenge, listening, learning, evolving, Nintendo did what they've been doing for a while now. They sued. Together with the Pokemon Company, they filed a patent infringement lawsuit against the Palworld dev team. Not over character design, surprisingly, not even over branding, but over mechanics. Things like throwing a Pal Spear to catch creatures, using them in combat, riding them across the world. And because of all of this, the Palworld team had to actually go in and change all of those features. They stripped out mechanics that players loved, not because they were unethical, but because they simply couldn't defend themselves against a legal juggernaut. And just like with the Gary Bowser case, Nintendo tried to bring other companies into the fight. Sony and Microsoft were reportedly approached to back them again here, and again, they declined. They did not want to be a part of it. And all of this says a lot, because this could have been a big moment for Nintendo, a wake-up call, an opportunity for them to ask, what is it that people are responding to? Why are they so excited about this? What can we learn from this? But instead of innovation, they chose litigation. And to me, it was not a stand for creativity or IP protection. The Pokemon formula has been around for literally 30 years. We all know what it is and where it comes from. And Palworld was not going to change that. No. This was Nintendo being a bully and swinging at anything that threatened the comfort of their complacency. They had an opportunity to grow, to evolve, to take advantage of someone already laying the groundwork for them, but instead, they chose violence. And after everything, the creator takedowns, the lawsuits, the silencing of innovation, you think maybe Nintendo would at least try to get one thing right. Their legacy. I remember when Nintendo Online was first announced. It sounded like such a win, a way to legally revisit classic titles, play old favorites, dive back into the library that built up this brand. And at first, I was so hopeful, but the reality has been frustrating at best. Games get added randomly. Some months it's not much. Other months it's one obscure NES title no one really asked for. Entire consoles like Game Boy Advance or N64 still feel incomplete, and sometimes titles will just disappear without warning or explanation. They're just gone. And now, with the launch of the Switch 2, I thought maybe they would just try to clean things up a bit. GameCube has finally joined the retro lineup, which is very awesome, but they only added 3 games at launch. Wind Waker, Soul Calibur 2, and F-Zero GX.
Oh, Soul Calibur 2 went so hard.
I guess, but it's also pretty bare bones for a console with so many legendary titles. And yes, I know more are coming, but why launch with so few? Why not not take the easy win here and give your fans what they've been begging you for years? Beyond the catalog, the performance isn't always there either. Sometimes there's lag, some games have awkward control schemes, others don't support cloud saves. It doesn't really feel like a premium service. It feels like something Nintendo begrudgingly maintains, and definitely not something that they can be proud of. The thing is I've always wanted to support something like this. I actually am very happy to pay to play these games legally. I want to revisit the titles that shaped me in a clean, easy way, but Nintendo has made it so hard. It's like they're sitting on this treasure trove of nostalgia, this very beautiful, powerful legacy, and instead of sharing it or celebrating it with us, they keep it to themselves and withhold it. They kind of hold it over us like drugs, honestly, banking on the fact that we'll continue to play the part of the willing addicts who will be so happy for even the tiniest drop. It really is heartbreaking, but at this point, I'm not even really mad about it. I'm just tired and maybe still a little bit sad.
Yeah.
Now, again, to be clear, this video is not meant to shame anybody. If you bought the Switch 2 or you're a part of Nintendo Online and you're loving it, I think that's great. Truly, I am not here to steal joy away from anyone. This video really is just to talk about how I can't ignore how much my own relationship with Nintendo has changed over the years. And I don't love them anymore. Not the company, not like I used to. And that's difficult to say out loud because I grew up on these games. I spent summers chasing stars in Mario 64, winters decorating my Animal Crossing home, racing my siblings in Mario Kart, riding Epona across Hyrule Field like it was the most magical thing in the world. And for me, these were not just games. They were a part of my childhood. And that's why all of this hurts so much, because the company that once led with a full heart and love for gaming feels like it's running on autopilot, giving us the absolute bare minimum. Comfortable, safe, lazy, greedy. We're getting less and paying more. And look, the industry as a whole is a bit of a mess right now, but it's still fair for us to ask for better, to feel valued as customers, to want these companies to care. And for a long time, I really believed that Nintendo did, that they were different, that they stood for something. But now it's hard to see how that could still be true. I always joke that my relationship with Nintendo is super toxic because even after all of this, even after how I've seen how they treat their consumers and fans, part of me still hopes that they'll change because they could. It really would be so easy. If they wanted to, they could be the company that supports creators instead of silencing them, shares their legacy instead of locking it away, prioritizes joy over control, and evolves instead of punishing innovation. I really would love nothing more than to fall back in love with them. But right now, it just seems like Nintendo is going to keep being Nintendo, just very stuck and too happy to stay that way. The love that I once had for
That's
them.
actually true. Like, she's totally right about that. Apple could take or not Apple, freaking Nintendo could make a huge pivot and be the gaming brand for creators. You know what I mean? Like, there's an area that they could tap into, like rather than being a what is the word, what's the opposite of advocate, like adversary or something like that, but they could actually, they could be the company for creators. That's actually a good take from her. This guy Wolfden, he makes content about, man, his thumbnails are pretty good here. Look at these, 3.5 million views. Ooh. The first thing to do with your brand new Nintendo Switch, I gotta add this to the thumbnail vault. Come on, Figma, load. What are like some of his, the most fun, disappointing about the Switch?
Retroid, to me, hasn't really done anything different or innovating. Just cheap and good enough. Even when other companies are making similar products that are a bit better, Retroid's flagship landscape handhelds are usually easy to recommend because they have a good price to performance ratio. However, the quality is sometimes a bit of a miss. And let's face it, the designs have gotten a bit boring. How many landscape handhelds do we need in our lives? This is at least interesting. I love the idea of portrait handhelds. I love that DMG style. I also really like having a square-ish screen because most of the retro games we'll be playing on here anyway are best suited for 4x3 and not 16:9. This does
That's
come
actually a
with
little bit
some
true.
other challenges, like not having thumbsticks. But the most intriguing thing about this for me is the 6 face buttons. This device comes in 7 colorways. All of them have 4 face buttons, which is pretty common these days, except for one of the colorways, the classic 6 colorway. This one has 6 buttons. It looks like, you know, the classic Japanese Sega Saturn controller. Having 6 buttons would make classic Sega Genesis, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, and even some Capcom arcade games a lot easier to play. But my ears didn't immediately perk up because of Sega Saturn games. No. And let's be honest, most of the Sega games that I play don't require more than 3 buttons. I was mostly intrigued to play N64 games on here. Yeah, it doesn't have a thumbstick, it has a D-pad. But I've played enough N64 with the D-pad to know that it's not all that bad. It's the C buttons for me. Having only 4 face buttons is usually a huge problem. Even having a right stick is sometimes not satisfactory enough. Sometimes
Where's the link to
it's
this?
better to be able to press a button than it is to flick a stick. This kind of fixes that. You have all of the face buttons you need for N64 games. You got an A and a B button and 4 C buttons. Sure, they're scrunched together and angled a little weird, but it works and it's more intuitive than you might think. Okay, you gotta trust me on this one. This is the Retroid Pocket Classic. It's not the perfect handheld. It's still got some Retroid bullshit going on, and these extra buttons introduce some new problems, but it might be my favorite Retroid ever, and trust me, I was not expecting that at all. I mean,
No.
I've certainly had the best time with this one so far.
This video is sponsored by Ugreen and their Genshin Impact series. Oh, you playing already without me? Get me in there. Yeah, man, join up. My battery's dead, but I stopped by 7-Eleven and got this charger for $2. Are you sure you can trust that charger? Capacity and a cool smart TFT display, or their Nexode charger with up to 65 watts for 3 devices.
I think I literally
Benefited
bought
by
one of
the 2
these
additional
last
face
night.
buttons. Now you have more buttons to correspond to on-screen controls, which can be useful in some more complicated games. It can even hit some really, really light Switch emulation. And I mean really light. Don't expect to be playing Mario Odyssey on here or anything. It's definitely powerful, but it benchmarks terribly. It received the lowest 3D Mark score of any. Benchmarks terribly.
Anbaric RG Cube. What is this? What is this device? Is this another handheld? Whoa. Okay. You can get this on Amazon. US. No Canadian? I gotta go with the black, I'll be honest. All black, everything. I can't look at that on Amazon or it leaks my address. I mean, like $200 isn't a terrible price. I mean, come on. Retroid Pocket 4 handhelds. Retroid Pocket 5. Where was the Pocket 4 he just had on here?
It received the lowest 3D Mark score of any handheld that I've ever tested, which is weird because it played most games just fine. It's also only $130. So performing that good and staying that cheap gives it a lot of points.
What the f? That's like really low. I thought it would do better than that.
While it is decently powerful, it does have a fan in it. I have it really low right now. But when I'm doing all my testing, I like to test these things at the highest performance mode, which
Yeah, of
means
course.
you'd probably want the fan on the highest that it can go.
And there it is.
It's honestly not that loud compared to other devices, but it is particularly high-pitched. So it is definitely an annoying sound. Moving the fan mode over to smart does help things. And luckily, most of the games that you're playing on here aren't
The
going to
touch
overheat
screen
the
is
console anyway. So
awesome.
you can probably just leave it on smart most of the time. You set this thing up just like any Android device, except Retroid will suggest some apps for you in the setup process. A lot of retro handheld enthusiasts and YouTubers would suggest that you download your own apps, but for the sake of simplicity, these are fine. If you don't know which ones to get, just get all of them. They're free. These are apps that will play your ROMs. This is a bring your own ROMs device. Retroid does provide a launcher so that you can navigate and launch all of your games and ROMs, but it sucks really bad now. In my Retroid Pocket 5 and Pocket Mini review, the app just did not work at all. Now it loads, but there is no indications on where you should put your ROMs or how to get the app to scan them or anything. Someone on my live stream let me know they have to go into each game directory and press X. This is indicated nowhere in the app at all, except for maybe this little text right here that I missed. It's also, by the way, not indicated anywhere on the internet.
You're a lifesaver. You gotta go to details. This fucking thing sucks.
And then I did it, and it took like a really long time just for me to get my Game Boy Advance games to download. What are we downloading? It's downloading box art. But the communication in this app is so bad. It's a lot of broken English, so I kind of understand it to an extent. Everyone was telling me to cancel it. You literally cancel the loading bar and all of your games are there. How would I have ever known to do any of this? And again, there's no information online whatsoever because nobody uses their app. Everybody just uses other launchers. It's such a waste to spend so much time developing an app specifically for this device and then just botching the communication so much that nobody can use it. And what's even crazier is that the old one was fine. The old one was just fine. We could have just give me that one back. Anyway, just use a launcher like Emulation Station. It's way easier. Retro Game Core has a tutorial on that. It makes life great. It just creates folders for you. Just put the games in those folders and you're all set. It knows where everything is. This screen is around 4 inches, so 1240 by 1080 pixels. It is a very weird aspect ratio. No retro systems use this aspect ratio, but it is the same exact aspect ratio and resolution as the Aya Neo Pocket DMG. And what I learned from that device is that this weird square-ish aspect ratio is kind of right in the middle of a lot of different retro handhelds and retro consoles, and it ends up displaying them all very well with minimal letterboxing. A 4:3 screen might have some pretty hefty window boxing or black bars on the sides for Game Boy games. This screen does not do that, and it still displays 4:3 content like SNES games pretty decently too. When playing SNES, I noticed the screen wasn't scaling all that great. You can see it a little bit in Mega Man's health bar. It's really not terrible. It's not the end of the world. But to make it look perfect, we can fix this by enabling integer scaling. Not a problem. But lately, I've been into shaders, trying to get the whole retro CRT look in my retro games. So I enabled the CRT Geom shader, and I was a little bit surprised at how terrible it made the game run. It was like way slower. I didn't think it would have that much of an effect on the GPU, but it does. Changing the renderer from GL to Vulkan doesn't seem to help at all. Swapping over to CRT Geom Mini does seem to fix things, and it doesn't really look all that different. It's just weird that the shader would cause that much of a problem. right after writing this, I was casually browsing Reddit and I came across this post where somebody compiled a list of all of the different shaders that will run great on a Retroid Pocket Classic. And I thought, this is exactly what I've been looking for. This guy did a great job compiling all the, how does somebody have the time? It's Retro Game Core. I noticed at the very end, it's Retro Game Core. Anyway, Game Boy, selecting them from a list. I mapped the left stick to the D-pad, but I guess you could just also toggle that joystick toggle setting I mentioned earlier. This button is B and this button is A. And the rest are C buttons orientated at this angle. It's a little weird given the angle the buttons are set at, but it honestly took no time at all for me to...
I mean, I kind of like the way this one looks though, hey? Oh, it uses a Snapdragon. Okay. That's probably a little bit better. Color variants, packing list. What does it say here? Add to cart, discount will be applied. Who would buy both? Like what all consoles can you play on these systems? Weight, size. Oh, that's a big ass battery. 5,000 milliamps. Okay. Active cooling. That means it has a fan. Interesting. Interesting.
To adjust while playing. It's intuitive if you've ever played these games with an actual... It looks like 2024 was the year of the handheld. There are just so many handhelds. The market is for sure getting saturated. But in hindsight, I'm very happy with the variety that we have here. There's been some great advancements in retro handhelds and clone
What does he
consoles.
review here?
PC handhelds hit their stride with some wacky form factors and second-gen iterations that address a lot of our grievances. And to get 4 extra months of Surfshark. Why are you wet? I watch so much stuff. I watched this one video.
I have
where
that
there's
shirt.
This real estate agent, and she's totally not a real estate agent.
All right, you got it.
Okay, I'm trying to film something.
Hey,
What?
bye. Hey,
What?
hey. Merry Christmas.
Okay,
Come on,
all
man.
right. That's enough. Anyway, I'm going to do this a little bit backwards, and I'm going to start with some honorable mentions. That way you know what's not going to be on the list. A lot of other people are going to have on their top 5 lists the Retroid Pocket 5. It seems like a pretty great handheld. I have not reviewed it yet. It is right here, still in the box. Shipping kind of took an ungodly amount of time. I did receive the Retroid Pocket Mini a few months back, but I wanted to wait until I got the 5 and review them both at the same time because I don't want to give them 2 videos. It finally came, but I'm booked with a lot of other stuff I gotta make videos on, so we'll probably have to wait until after the holidays. At least I'll have a nice solid 2 weeks to play with it over the holidays. Retroid makes great budget options for GameCube, PS2, and even surprisingly powerful Nintendo Switch emulation. I also really like Retroid for how easy it is to set up versus a lot of other emulation handhelds, especially Android ones. However, I already started messing with the Retroid Pocket Mini, and I have to say, I was pretty frustrated by that setup process.
Oh, no.
Also, one of the buttons is up on a software level. This is the second time this happened to me with the Retroid device.
Also, the Retroid Pocket 4 came out earlier this year, and I haven't touched that once since I reviewed it. Well, that's just a little taste of what that review is going to be like, but I got to move on. I want to give Aya Neo a shout out for having a pretty good year this year. The Flip is a fantastic DS-style PC handheld. This thing really turned heads. This review
I'm not
was one of
interested
my
in
most viewed videos of this year.
PC
And it was such a
games.
fun console to play with. Emulating 3DS games on a tiny PC with a massive screen is kind of sick. It's also the best Wii U emulator money can buy. I'd argue this is the best way to play some Wii U games. I loved this thing, but my time with it was a little short-lived. I played it for a few weeks after that review and then mostly shelved it for better PC handhelds. It's cool, but it is kind of a novelty. And let's not forget the Aya Neo Pocket DMG that I have right here because I literally just reviewed this. It's another really cool handheld, and I love how different it is than anything else on the market. It's a super powerful vertical handheld. No one else is doing vertical handhelds like this currently, but it's, again, another novelty. I don't know how much I'll actually be using it. Okay, those are just the honorable mentions, and we're already 3 handhelds deep, so let's get right along and go on to number 5 of my top 5 gaming handhelds of this year, and it might surprise you. We're talking about the funny playing FPGBC. Are you impressed that I memorized all of that? It's literally just a Game Boy. It's notable because it's an FPGA console similar to the Analog Pocket. So it emulates a game.
See, all I want is the ability to play old Game Boy games, right? I mean, I want to be able to play Advance Wars and Final Fantasy Tactics and Fire Emblem Advanced. I'm sure there's going to be a whole pile of other ones. I do not want to spend $1,000 on a Wii 2 or whatever it's called. Or no, sorry, the Switch. That's what it's called.
Game Boy Color pretty closely on a hardware level, but unlike the Analog Pocket, it's under $100. So it's significantly cheaper. It comes as a kit, but it's incredibly easy and rewarding to put together yourself. It's honestly just a few screws. It's very simple. The downsides are that it requires multiple purchases. They really should just sell it as a bundle. It also doesn't play Game Boy Advance games like the Analog Pocket does, only Game Boy and Game Boy Color. It also has a weird clock speed. It's like slightly different than an original real Game Boy Color. So if you're anal about accuracy, maybe this isn't for you. But it is currently the best way to get what is essentially a modded Game Boy Color with a modern IPS screen. I got this thing back in January, and I've been thinking about it ever since. So it deserves a spot on this list. Number 4 is a device that I just recently reviewed. It's something that I thought I was gonna hate, and I'm taking it out of the case now because I recently just took it on a trip with me. It's been fresh on my mind ever since I got it. This is the Trim UI Brick. This checks a lot of boxes for me. It's extremely portable, but not too small to be uncomfortable to play. The screen is nice, everything looks great on here, and it's cheap. You can find it for just $60. It also has the perfect size to power ratio. It plays all the way up to N64 and even Dreamcast and some DS games, if you can deal with them being played on a single screen. I loved my Mii Mini that came before this. The Trim UI Brick is slightly larger, but it can play a lot more stuff. Recently, Retro Game Core gave me a micro SD card with his special cocktail of MinUI on it, which makes it look even more like a tiny Analog Pocket. This simplifies the UI a ton. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to get N64 games to work on here. On my last trip, I brought both my MSI Claw and my ROG Ally X, and I played neither of them. I played the Trim UI Brick the whole time. I played Pico 8 Celeste and Bomberman Hero. It means a lot if I'm willing to pick up a device on my leisure time, something I'm not actively reviewing, because there's just so much to choose from these days.
Yeah.
So the Trim UI Brick definitely deserves its spot here at number 4. Number 3 is another case of a handheld that I slowly grew to love over time after I was done reviewing it, and that is the Odin 2 Mini. The Odin 2 came out last year, and I liked that a lot, but I slowly lost interest. It suffers from the same stuff that a lot of other 16:9 retro handhelds suffer from, and it's kind of just a Switch Lite form factor. There's nothing wrong with being like a Switch Lite, but if I wanted to play powerful modern games, I would just play them on a Switch Lite. The Switch Lite's only $200. It's kind of a great handheld. I don't need anything to be like that if it's going to be more than twice the price. If I want to be emulating retro games, I'd rather have them in a more convenient form factor, and this form factor is perfect here on the Odin 2 Mini. It is essentially a PS Vita, but it is so cool to have a modern Vita that can play basically anything. It's super powerful and can play GameCube, Vita, and even Nintendo Switch games. When I first set it up, I set it up like I would any other emulation handheld. I got GameCube and PS2 games on there, but then I spent a decent amount of time getting Vita games on here. And I did it legitimately. I moved them from my hacked Vita over to my Odin 2 Mini. That was a huge pain in the ass that I don't recommend. But I did have a lot of fun playing Gravity Rush on here, even after I posted that video. But I fell in love with this device when Zelda Echoes of Wisdom came out. That was around the time that I got the MiG Switch Cart Dumper. This game is inspired by a game that is a remake of a Game Boy game. I think that might have something to do with why this game feels so good on a smaller handheld like this.
Different handhelds.
It makes me wish that
It's
Nintendo would do
crazy. I
something
don't know which one to
official,
get.
like make a tiny Nintendo Switch. I'm not even usually one for emulating modern games. I'd rather just play them how they're intended if it's easy enough to acquire. But man, something about getting it to work on here and having it be actually pocketable is pretty sick. There's some tinkering I had to do to get it to work on here, and it doesn't work perfectly. I'll just link a previous video where I go into more detail on how I got it to work on here. You can just watch that. Sometimes I have a lot more fun getting games to work than I do actually playing the game. Anyway, this Odin is one of the most powerful emulation handhelds that I own, and it's definitely the smallest one that can do pretty hefty Nintendo Switch emulation. And the screen is mini LED, which has a very similar look to OLED. It's kind of perfect. Since this, Ein released the Odin 2 Portal, which is bigger, has an actual OLED screen, and mostly the same specs. So I kind of think being bigger kind of defeats the purpose. I would much rather have this. I love this thing.
I agree.
I think they did a great job. It's number 3 for this year. There's only 2 left. People who watch my videos or people who are fans of handhelds in general probably know which 2 I'm going to be talking about. You'll probably know this one. This is the RG35XX-SP, and this is number 2 on the list. Oh, so what's number 1? Calm down, we'll get there. This year, Ambernick released about 1 billion XX devices, all with the same H700 chip inside. It got very old very quick. We don't need all these form factors, but having so many of these has its benefits. The software has been supported very well in this past year. It's gotten way better.
What is
Games
number 2?
run better. The default settings for each system are super well optimized. But that's pretty much the same on all XX devices now. The major benefit of this particular one is the SP's clamshell form factor. I'm not even that big of a clamshell fan. The fact that it looks exactly like a Game Boy Advance SP doesn't hit me in my nostalgia. But even I can't deny the practicality of a clamshell. It's perfect for just tossing in my bag. The H700 chip is a little stale by this point, but it is capable of a lot of systems and even ports of some Steam games now. If you put some custom firmware on it, it can do a lot. And best of all, it's probably the easiest handheld to take with you. This was an incredibly popular handheld this year, and I totally get the hype. I played this way after my review, and modders and custom firmware people are still iterating.
Can you
and
buy this one
upgrading
off of Amazon?
It gets
Let's look.
number 2 on this list. Before we get to number 1, we already did the honorable mentions. Let's do some dishonorable mentions, some of the worst handhelds that came out this year. It's a little hard because I usually try not to bother with stuff if they're going to be really bad. So I guess you can consider these the most disappointing. MSI made some interesting decisions with the Claw earlier this year. It was actually pretty good in a lot of ways. It was the quietest handheld by far, but the things that mattered most, the compatibility with games and the price tag. If you put those two together, you have the perfect why console. Why does this exist? Who is this for? The Ein Loki is another one I was interested in. The release was a show. They changed around their different versions so much that I accidentally got two that were technically different SKUs, but indistinguishable from each other. It was also not powerful at all. It probably would be pretty great for retro and indie games, but Windows is just not a great OS for a low-powered device. And at this point, just get a Steam Deck. The 40XXV has a lot of the accolades of the SP, but it came out later, had a thumbstick that doesn't work right with the stock firmware, and was Ambernick's first console to launch with pirated PC games on it. So it was all around just a bad decision factory. This is the handheld that made me decide to stop reviewing so many of these. I can't do it anymore. They've just gotta be more different and more interesting than this. Okay, we've stalled long enough. It's time for number one. You might have forgotten that this list also includes PC handhelds. We're gonna talk about the ROG Ally X, which is my favorite handheld that has come out this year. Probably the most popular PC handheld that came out this year. This changed a lot about the original ROG Ally. You now have 24 gigabytes of RAM instead of 16, and the RAM is slightly faster. You've got better thumbsticks that don't rub all weird. We've got room for full-sized SSDs, so you can upgrade your SSD for way cheaper now. 2 USB-C ports and one that's Thunderbolt 4 for better compatibility with eGPUs. And most importantly, the micro SD card slot has been moved so it won't overheat on you. Asus got in a lot of trouble for how they handled the original ROG Ally's micro SD card slot. This controversy also uncovered their horrible customer service. I don't love how they handled that micro SD card issue in the last ROG Ally. But it would seem that they did a little bit of a reform of their warranty and customer service situation. So if you have any issues like that micro SD card issue, it
so what other
should
ones
be
do you have here?
covered by now. I would still recommend, if you want one of their products, get it through a brick and mortar store like
Can you
Best
buy this
Buy. That
off
way you're
Amazon?
covered under their warranty and return service as well. You'll have a little bit of a double protection. The fact that the Ally X is number one is because I've been using it the most. Had it broken on me and had I had customer service issues, maybe it wouldn't be number one. But so far, nothing's happened. I've even serviced it myself. The real reason it's number one on this list isn't because of its small improvements. It isn't even because of how it comes stock. I probably wouldn't love it as much as I do if I didn't put Bazite on here. If you watch my videos, you're probably so sick of me talking about Bazite so much. It's essentially a custom version of SteamOS made specifically for these devices. But Bob, doesn't that defeat the purpose of a Windows handheld? You say in a really annoying voice. Yeah, it does. Before this, I would reach for my Steam Deck and play most of my PC games portably on a Steam Deck. Now, I almost never play my Steam Deck. I pick up the Ally every time. It defaults to booting into Bazite, so most of the time, I just have a Steam Deck-like experience. But now it's more powerful. And if a game doesn't support SteamOS, I can just boot it into Windows and play it that way. It's the best of both worlds. It is hard to recommend this over a Steam Deck because I know not everyone wants to put the work into installing Bazite. And the Ally X is more expensive than a Steam Deck. It's not as good of a deal. But if you want a Windows handheld anyway, putting Bazite on there might be a good move. The Ally X absolutely gets my number one pick for this year because it's been my go-to handheld for most of my personal gameplay. Anything I play on PC gets downloaded onto this. A few weeks ago when I went to the MSI event, everyone with a TikTok to go follow the Wolf Den podcast over on there so that we can get to 10,000 subs so we can unlock the ability to live stream. And also subscribe to this channel right here because we've been flirting with 1 million subs for years. Okay, thank you. I'm frequently asked what I actually use on my day-to-day. Which device or devices do I actually game on? And the answer to that has changed a lot over the past few years. Sometimes the question is posed like, do you actually use your Steam Deck OLED, or do Do you actually play on your RG 405VK79 tilde exclamation point? My go-to answer is usually, I review so many of these things, I'm never really sticking to just one. I'm usually swapping between whatever I gotta make a video on that week or month. But honestly, things have been slowing down a little bit. Partly because I rejected all the latest Ambernic stuff that they keep releasing. It's honestly been very refreshing. Thanks to reviewing so many of these devices, I do have the privilege of having a lot of options. So I figured it was worth talking about which ones stayed in my rotation much farther than the review period. Out of all of the devices, these are the ones that I still use daily or weekly for my personal use.
Okay, let's hear it.
This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Hey Bob, what you doing over there? Fake Google reviews for hospitals again? What? Nah, I'm over that phase. I'm trying to download old Windows 95 and DOS games, but I'm a little sketched out by these websites. All right, well, probably just don't go to that.
As we block to see what your stuff are with Surfshark.
All right, thanks to Surfshark, I got the game that I want. This is the game that you wanted? You want Snood? I could easily get Snood. They found it. A lot of my gaming right before bed, so my nightstand is a perfect illustration of which devices held my interest. I also don't often clear off my nightstand. Currently, there's an Ein Mini 2, a 1X player big guy, a generic RG 35XX device, and an Asus ROG Ally X. There's also a PlayStation Portal buried somewhere in there. I'll do the quick ones first. The PlayStation Portal could be explained away pretty quick. This had the privilege of being my least favorite handheld of last year, which is a little unfair because it's not exactly a handheld. It's more of like a streaming only device, but it doesn't even do a good. That's not just fine. Anyway, this is in my nightstand because I was playing Astrobot, which is such an awesome game. It would be so perfect in a handheld form factor. Unfortunately, the input lag that happens is extremely subtle.
I can literally see it from the
just
video.
Present enough to deter me from ever wanting to play it this way. So the PlayStation Portal is going right back in the box on the shelf. I do really enjoy the big screen on the 1X player. X1, I think is the name of it. I played this for a little bit after the review video because I enjoyed playing Marvel vs. Capcom on it with my Snackbox controller attached. But I plan to revisit because I just doing a product. It's new and updated and all of my stuff is freshly on there already. It's just more convenient to use that than it is to go back to something else and have to update it and put all my stuff back on it, you know? It also doesn't help that Ubisoft's cloud save system is ass. So next player will be retired soon too. I'll have to suck it up. It provided me the review unit, and for that I'm very grateful because it is a little expensive, but it'll probably be the last 1X player device that I ever review.
Why?
Because about a week after the review, they emailed me and thanked me for the review and then asked if I could put their product name in the title of the video, and I kind of ignored it. But then within a few hours, they emailed me again and told me to take down the whole video because they didn't approve it. What companies are out here reviewing review videos? Better yet, what YouTubers are giving companies their video reviews to review before they post them?
I think a lot of
Don't do
YouTubers
that.
are.
Anyway, that's
no?
the end of them for me. Next, we have to talk about the Ein Odin 2 Mini. This, honestly, collected dust up here on the nightstand for a little bit. I was using it to play Zenless Zone Zero, believe it or not. It's a great device for Android games like that. The game is all right. But then I decided to...
I guess I'll clarify. There's a difference between a paid promotion and a paid review. I think a lot of paid promotion videos are subject to review from the brand. But if a company is sending you a product to give an unbiased review of said product, and especially if there's no monetary exchange, if they're just giving you a unit to purely just review, then I don't think that the company should be reviewing your content. No, I don't think so.
To try using my Nintendo Switch cart dumper, that shall not be named, to dump my copy of The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom that I got. I started that game on the Steam Deck, then I jumped through a lot of hoops to transfer my save over to my Ein Odin 2 Mini. It was a huge pain in the ass to figure out what to do. It was a lot of trial and error, but if someone just tells you what folder to transfer, it's honestly very simple. It's this folder right here. That little code that is the name of the folder is the title ID for Echoes of Wisdom. Grab that from the Steam Deck, zip it up, and on Yuzu in the game settings, select actually runs pretty amazing on the Steam Deck. The purple Rift has issues displaying, which could be a game-breaking issue if that matters to you. I was fine navigating around that. It doesn't run that great on the Odin 2 Mini. Here's a couple of the settings that I ended up tweaking.
We're at accuracy level high, resolution 0.75 times, so it's 540p and 810p, which looks fine on this screen. We got VSync mode at mailbox, and I believe that's all that really matters here. I guess I should mention the mods. This was the only right here. Otherwise, the blur in this game is messed up, so this fixes the blur by removing it altogether.
It's not experience overall. I just think it's really cool to have this game on such a tiny device. I think this game is a perfect fit for a device this small, which should make sense. It's modeled after a game that was modeled after a Game Boy game. It's definitely a handheld game, and I actually rather enjoyed this game a lot. I'm not a big Zelda fan, and I kind of love how this game is essentially a big puzzle game, where you use your little gathered abilities to work through every aspect of the game. It's pretty sweet. But I also rather enjoyed getting it to work on forbidden hardware. I often enjoy the tinkering more than I do the actual game, and that's probably why I only spent like, what, 6 hours playing the game?
I'm in the opposite,
I like my Odin
where
2 Mini
I want to spend less time tinkering and more time playing these games. I'm at that point in my life where I don't, well, especially with the handheld console, I don't want this to be a technical problem solving hurdle. I just want to be able to get some games, drop them on, and hit play.
A lot. It's not too big. It's perfectly pocketable. It's like the perfect size, and we can still see everything on its big, clear screen. There is a new Odin coming out called the Odin 2 Portal. I will not be getting that because it is essentially the same device, just big, and I don't much care for that because I like.
I don't want a big device.
How tiny this guy is. Also on the nightstand, we have what I will call a 35XX device. Ever since my video on the Ambernic RG35XX-SP, I've always had it with me in my bag. When I go out, I take a pair of headphones, my camera, a battery for my phone that I never end up using, and my 35XX-SP. I recently made a video where I put Steam games on here, like UFO 50. I'll admit, this is not where I've been doing most of my UFO 50 gameplay. I usually just open my SP and pop in for a quick retro game session, then close it and move on with my life. I'm not really doing any serious play sessions on here, unless I'm like on a flight or something, which is pretty rare. The SP has been my little companion console. The reason why the 35XX Plus is on my nightstand is because it's f***ed up. It won't turn on. And I've spent many hours one night trying to flash it over and over again to try to get it to turn on.
What could does anyone here watching? We got half a dozen people on Twitch and YouTube and Kick. Do you guys have a retro handheld console? And if not, like, what do you know anyone that does? Like, I just want to be able to play. Like, I can't even imagine playing too many N64 games. I just want to relive some of the old Game Boy Advance, the SP games. That's what I want.
People very frequently come into my Twitch chat and they will tell me I have a problem with my Ambernic console. It won't turn on. And my answer is usually try a different charge cable, try a different charger, try a different outlet, try a different micro SD card. And one of those things usually works for people. I tried all of that and none of that worked for me here. I even tried taking it apart and unplugging the battery and replugging it back in. I don't know what's going on. I've been through a lot of Ambernic devices, and honestly, one dud out of the plethora of Ambernic devices that I've tested really isn't that big of a deal. I'm just realizing how much these things are a pain in the ass to work with. This all stemmed from me trying to update the stock firmware with the new stock firmware. Now, no firmware will work on it at all. Lastly, I really do love my Steam Deck a lot, especially the OLED version. That screen is beautiful. But ever since installing Bazite on my ROG Ally X, that has been my go-to for most PC games. I get the versatility of being able to use actual windows if I need to, like
for Star Wars Outlaws because of the Ubisoft launcher, but I also get the much more intuitive experience of using SteamOS for most games. The reason I love the Steam Deck is because of the ease of use SteamOS provides. Now, I have that here with my higher spec ROG Ally X. I just started playing Sonic X Shadow Generations, and I thought about playing it on the Steam Deck, but I opted to play it on the ROG Ally X running Bazite because I wanted depth on the Ace game hardware, but hopefully more than 1 frame per second. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. I also saw a theory that it might just be really my iPhone. It's on Apple Arcade, so this is where I decided to finally check it out. And I play it almost every night before bed.
It's Wolfden. See, does he have this? Because it came out a year ago. I want to know the exact date, June 6th. Okay, so actually, yeah, that is
The
like 12
clamshell
months.
everyone's been waiting for. This is the exact same internals as the RG35XX Plus, but in SP form. It looks almost exactly like an original GBA SP, although slightly bigger in a few ways. Its bigness makes it look like a knockoff, and that's because it is. It's very similar to one of those devices you'd see at a mall kiosk that's packed with games, except these things have gotten good. The build quality here is good. The emulation quality here is good. And what's most surprising to me is that it plays everything well stock. That means you don't have to do anything to it, like you would have to do with a lot of previous devices from Ambernic, the company that made this. Right out of the box, I barely had to change any settings. This thing just worked. With a design that welcomes tossing in your bag with no protection and a $65 price tag, this thing is certainly one of the ones to get right
115
now,
Canadian, come
especially
on.
if you're new to emulation handhelds. And if you're not, there's plenty of room to tinker here. Because of the popularity of this device, there's a ton of custom firmware out there that allows you to do some pretty wild stuff. There's something here for everybody. In a world where there are 7 of these retro handhelds launching every single week, I was not expecting to like this one as much as I do.
This video is sponsored by Trade.
Do I have time to make a cup of coffee? Hey! Shh. I always leave a light in the room. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want?
Mocha. You have decaf?
No, it's frozen! The decaf's frozen! This week's coffee is Bean and Bean. It's Rio Nights with notes of chocolate raisin toasted nuts roasty. Move. That's hot. That's hot. The Trade sources the best local roasters and brings them right to your door. Iced.
Yes.
Trade maps your specific preference science, marrying industry expertise and machine learning. One of these.
Little cocktail, Tom Cruise.
Is that a movie?
Yeah, Tom.
Get 30% off of your first order. Hachoo! And then,
Wow.
there you go. Try it and tell me you love it.
You're gonna take it. Still really good.
Good. I'm late for my appointment. Oh, it's tomorrow. The RG35XX is one of my favorite handhelds because it's cheap and it can play a lot of retro systems right out of the box with no tinkering whatsoever. It's the perfect entry point for anyone trying to get into the space. Last year, Ambernic released the RG35XX Plus, which was a small spec bump that added the capability to play a few more systems like N64 and DS. Except, I thought it didn't play those added consoles very well. At the time, I wasn't recommending the Plus because it didn't have custom firmware support, and the
Okay.
firmware that it came with was bad. So, if it couldn't play those added consoles very well, and you couldn't put any extra firmware on it to make them play good, why would you get that over the original? This RG35XX SP has the exact same internals as the RG35XX Plus. That means that it can play Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, of course, SNES, but now even N64, Dreamcast, and DS, among others. it being virtually the same as the RG35XX Plus, you'd think I'd hate the emulation quality here. But we're like, what, 5 months removed of my review of the RG35XX Plus? And a lot has changed since then. A lot that I was not expecting. Visually, this thing looks like a weird GBA SP. The build quality is solid, so it doesn't feel like a knockoff, but it definitely looks a little off if you stare at it hard enough. The clicky buttons got a lot of flack from other reviewers, but I love them. You know that I already like clicky buttons, but the original SP also has somewhat clicky buttons. These ones are a bit taller, which is welcome here. The shoulder buttons are exactly the same as the original GBA SP shoulder buttons, with 2 extra added stacked buttons that aren't great to press, but it's fine. They kind of didn't have much choice if they were trying to mimic the original with added functionality. There's also USB-C and HDMI out, which is a huge W over other retro
so what are you
handhelds
going
in the same
to
price
do
range.
with that?
It does also have a headphone jack, which is a one-up over even just the original GBA SP. That's right, Nintendo had the courage to remove the headphone jack before Apple did. The whole unit feels big and thick compared to the original GBA SP. The screen feels way bigger. I thought it was because the screen was the same size as the GBA SP, including the black bezels, but it's actually even bigger than that. Everything is bigger. The entire top screen, bottom part, the D-pad is bigger, the bottom is thicker, but the top part is the same thickness. This is kind of what makes it feel a little off. I kind of wish it was the same size as an original GBA SP, but I guess they wanted to shove a whole RG35XX in here without much tinkering. Fortunately, the hinge does feel really good. It feels pretty much identical to the original SP hinge. It has the same articulation. Usually these companies are pretty bad at doing hinges, but this one feels pretty solid. It has auto sleep when you close the clamshell. The original SP does not even have that. Auto wake only works if you open it very quickly for some reason. But I'll warn that while it's asleep, the battery does drain pretty quickly. I think you get about a day of sleep mode.
Just turn it off.
It's sleeping for about a day, and now we have, I think, 0% battery. It's still on though. So this thing is basically a souped-up Game Boy Advance SP, but it does even more than what a Game Boy Advance SP does, except play actual cartridges. Of course, this thing only plays ROMs. When you first boot this thing up, you'll be greeted with a few tabs. Do not ever open the Game Rooms tab. This one tab is what makes this stock firmware bad. I don't know why there are multiple tabs for selecting games, but selecting a game through the Game Rooms tab will have the games run poorly for some reason. They should just get rid of this tab altogether. It's just going to deter people who are going to open this thing up for the first time. It's going to get really frustrating. They're going to be like, why are all my games running so bad? Besides that, if we open all of our ROMs from the RA Game tab, which is the second tab on the home screen, Ambernick did like a surprisingly great job with all of the default aspect ratios, shaders, and borders on this device. Every system looks pretty much right at home on here. Some of these settings that are already applied help make the games run better, but some are a preference thing, like visual adjustments. Luckily, I prefer pretty much everything they did. I love how the GBA SP logo takes up the bottom of the screen, so GBA games are the perfect aspect ratio, and the whole unit looks like a big GBA SP. There's even a drop shadow inside the screen, so it looks like the screen is recessed, and it's
no
not
way.
recessed. This is the type of attention to detail that I've been yearning for from these retro handheld manufacturers, even though this is just like a RetroArch setting, but at least they enabled it by default. There's also a very subtle pixel grid overlay, not as harsh as like the funny playing Game Boy Color pixel grid overlay, but I like it. Pixel grids like this usually dim the screen a little bit. With these shaders enabled, max brightness of the RG35XX SP is very similar to max brightness of an AGS 101 original Game Boy Advance SP, with slightly brighter whites on the Anbernic. Colors are very similar too on the screen, with more vibrancy on the original SP, believe it or not. Bright colors are brighter on the original, blues are deeper on the Anbernic, and brighter and more saturated on the original. The sky on Sonic Advance is almost teal on the original.
So expect some slight color variance.
I don't necessarily
SNES games
care
are set to
too
have
much
pixel
about
perfect
that.
scaling, which gives them an 8:7 aspect ratio, which is all right. I kind of like 4:3 scaling, but I'm not opposed to this. It's still better than awkward integer scaling. Mega Man X's health bar looks fine, which means the scaling is good. However, there is no easy option for reverting to a 4:3 aspect ratio. You're kind of stuck with this pixel perfect 8:7 by default. You have to go to the Super Famicom directory, press the M button, scroll down to RetroArch settings, and turn off simple game menu. From there, you can turn off the overlays, which allow you to run the game at 4:3. This will take up more of the screen and look more closely to how the game plays on an actual CRT. Some people prefer pixel perfect, but I usually prefer 4:3 because that's what you actually play it on a CRT. From there, you can turn integer scaling on, and that will give you some window boxing, but it'll give you a little more clarity. And of course, Super Nintendo here passes the Yoshi's Island test with flying colors. Game Boy games look awesome on here. I don't usually like the pea soup color scheme, but it looks sick. And
Pea
the
soup
weird
color
ghosting that you get
scheme?
with
That's
the original
hilarious.
DMG Game Boy games is emulated here beautifully by default. If you're getting this for Game Boy or Game Boy Advance, you'll be happy with this right out of the box. From here, I jumped into N64, expecting it to be pretty bad because it was on the Plus. And Mario 64 did look pretty bad at first. The N64 shaders are weird looking. Mario has weird dark spots on his face, and there are some graphical glitches with textures here and there, but for the most part, it runs just fine. I could play a whole game like this. Remember, it is an N64 game. N64 wasn't exactly known for its beautiful textures. One issue is that the D-pad doesn't work as a thumbstick by default. You have to tap the power button once. That switches the D-pad to act like an analog stick. Who would have ever thought to press the power button? It should probably be the select button or any of the other buttons on here. At least it's easy to do. From here, I jumped into Perfect Dark, which often runs bad on these devices. I was surprised to see that it handles Perfect Dark surprisingly well. It's not perfect. There's graphical glitches with the textures every so often. The intro took a while to load, and the intro had some moderate frame skipping. But the gameplay was surprisingly solid. Even areas where it would normally lag, even on original hardware, it seemed just fine on here. Which is weird, because this is the exact same hardware as the RG35XX Plus, and I remember not liking N64 games on there.
I don't know
I guess
about
they
playing a
updated the
shooter on a
firmware.
little
They
handheld
did a
with
good
a
job.
D-pad. Hey?
Also, holding R2 in N64 games will make the face buttons act as C buttons, which makes playing Perfect Dark way easier with the limited buttons. This is actually a lot more intuitive to play as it sounds. Having a thumbstick would be better, but this is really meant for Game Boy Advance games and older. So even just being able to play Perfect Dark at this quality at all is a huge bonus. L2 does suck to press on this thing though. Next, I jumped over to DS, which I also expected to be pretty bad on this single screen device, and it was not. It was actually very nice. There are a few quality of life shortcuts that make using DS on a one-screen handheld a lot easier. L2 and R2 will change the screen layout on the fly. There is no touchscreen on here. Pressing the power button once will allow you to move the cursor around with the D-pad and click with the A button. Don't get this for games that require touchscreen input, but for games that are mostly controller focused and will be fine with one screen at a time, this is kind of awesome. It kind of reminds me of those Game Boy Color mods where people will shove a DS Lite into a Game Boy shell. It's kind of a mind to play DS games in an SP form factor.
Dreamcast has the same D-pad mode.
Yep.
Sounds good. I remember this being much worse on the Plus. There is a little bit of slowdown, but I think it's fine.
This is also capable of PSP games, which is also an interesting thing to see played on a Game Boy Advance SP. Those don't run that good on here. By default, PSP is stretched out, but that's an easy fix in the settings. it runs okay. It's not gonna run anything graphically demanding like Gran Turismo or Metal Gear Peace Walker, but it will run like Mega Man X Maverick Hunter with minimal frame skips. Basically, don't get this if you're excited to play PSP games. There's other devices for that.
I probably wouldn't be
There's
too
a
worried
lot more
about that
systems
then,
that
eh?
this thing is capable of, but
do you
those are
guys
all
think?
the ones that I'm usually interested in on these things, and those are the ones that you guys are usually interested in. Anbernic had a lot of time to tool around with the firmware on this thing because it is kind of an older platform. So they had some time to tool around with the firmware, and I think that they did a fantastic job here. Normally, I recommend putting custom firmware on these things if it's easy to do. Usually, that helps optimize all of the emulators to look a lot nicer and helps run the games better, but you don't have to do any of that. As long as you remember not to ever click on the Game Rooms tab, then you'll have a fine time. Everything will be optimized just fine for you. Because this is based on a platform that's been out for quite some time now, there are actually a ton of custom firmware options now for this thing, but I think that they're all in beta. I'm not gonna go into detail on too many of them. I tweeted out asking which ones are people's favorites and if it's worth getting any of them, and people got a little mad at that tweet. Even the guy who makes Garlic OS. Hey man, I'm a big fan of your work. It seems like the ones that people like are Min UI because it has a very nice looking UI and it maintains a sleep-wake function. But it removes Wi-Fi and also takes away N64, Dreamcast, and I think DS support. So that's lame. Even more people seemed happy with MUOS Beans. I have to say beans like that. And it was simple enough to install, so I gave it a try on a second micro SD card that I have. And that's another thing. A lot of these custom firmwares can just be sectioned off on different micro SD cards. So
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. You can't just like,
one for MUOS.
You don't need to like reflash
what I like
the
about
whole
MUOS is
thing.
that it doesn't require a specific folder structure. You can just kind of dump your library on here any way that you want. I don't really love this UI. It made me pick an emulator for GBA games and took a couple of tries to actually get to play one. And I wish it looked more like the stock GBA emulator did. But the whole reason people like MUOS is because of Portmaster. Portmaster allows you to play Linux games on here. So people are like taking games from their Steam Deck and getting them to work on here. Of course, it's only going to work with extremely low-powered games, but I've been hearing nothing but great things about it. This is kind of cool. It has a library of free games that you can download. It even has Celeste Classic. Right now, I'm playing VVV, and it's a native Linux port that's just working in here. That's kind of sick. And I'm connected to Wi-Fi, so I literally just downloaded it from here. I didn't have to connect it to anything. Although I did notice it only worked on a 2.4 gigahertz connection, so keep that in mind. I'd say right now, the stock firmware is just fine. Sure, the UI doesn't look that pretty, but it's remarkably functional right out of the box. It's kind of sad that functional is the bar that we've set for these things. Retro Gamecore also replied to my tweet and had a great breakdown of all of the different custom firmwares that are available right now and why people would want each one and what the trade-offs are. He also said he will have a video out sometime this week. It's probably out by now by the time this video goes up. That will break down all of the custom firmware and show you which one to get if you want any of them. But again, you don't have to mess around. The stock firmware is just fine. He also pointed me in the direction of someone who's been just tweaking all of the settings for the stock firmware to better optimize it. I'm not even sure.
Oh, just on GitHub? Okay.
But he's been taking that stock firmware and putting it on GitHub for you to download yourself. But again, I'm going to give this thing the out-of-the-box seal of approval. Again, everything works pretty much just fine out of the box with some minimal tinkering if you want to. And if you don't want to, that's fine too, as long as you don't touch that Game Rooms tab. I'm sure if you want to do some tinkering, there's plenty of stuff out there for you, and you already know what you want to do to it. You don't need to hear from me. The RG35XXSP also has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Wi-Fi isn't really that helpful to me, except it helps with Portmaster, but Bluetooth is helpful for using controllers while it's connected via HDMI. Screw this. That's extremely jaggy. Don't try to play Bluetooth on this thing. This is kind of crazy. Anbernic releases a ton of devices, and not all of them are great. In fact, I've been pretty disappointed lately with Anbernic.
But this reminds me of the original RG35XX. That was my go-to recommendation for people looking for a retro handheld, especially at that price point. I think this is gonna be my new recommendation to people. It's that availability, it's that price point, and it's the fact that everything kind of just works right out of the box. That makes it super easy to recommend. There also seems to be a lot of community support for this thing because I don't want to say it's an older platform, but it's been around for a long enough time where people have been able to tinker with it and done some nice things to it. I think whoever buys this, whether they want to be able to mess around with it or they just want it to work right out of the box, they will be more than happy with it. So long as they don't click on the game rooms tab. Make sure if you're like recommending this to somebody or giving it to somebody as a gift, you tell them not to click the first tab. There's something here for people who don't want to mess around at all and just want to get into the game. There's something here for people who want to mess around a lot. I'm sure they'll feel rewarded. And there's something here for people who only want to mess around a little bit. This is the one to get for right now, until the next one comes out in like 2 weeks. Slow down, I only release one video a week. I can't keep up. I will frequently get asked my retro handheld recommendations for like random price points. Someone will be like, hey, I got $111. What handheld should I get? And like, that's not enough information to go off of. So I've compiled an Excel spreadsheet of all the different retro handhelds that I've had the pleasure of tooling around with. And this will change the more I make more of these videos and do more of these reviews. But the link will stay the same. So if you ever feel like being in the market for one of these things, you can just go to that spreadsheet at any point and see where things move and which one's the best as of right now, at least.
The spreadsheet. What's he talking about? This. Okay. Now we're going to have fun. Now we're going to have fun. Let's look at a... Why did our UI scale down so much? Okay. Producer. Why can't we edit the... We can't edit this? Save, advanced settings. No, don't want to do that. Really? So in X, we can't rename the title of our live broadcast? Are you serious? Let's go to X here for a second. If we go to profile, we click here, edit. You're a bot. Oh, that's this one. Okay. Calculated it. Or what's the difference between the 4 and the 4 Pro? Is it maybe just the internal size? Maybe? I want to see what that says. Oh, a plus. But again, I don't think that they sell these on... Oh, they do.
What could I have said to raise you from the dead? Oh, could I be the sky on the 4th of July? Well, you do enough talk, my little hawk. Why do you cry? Tell me, what did you learn from the Tillamook burn or the 4th of July? We're all gonna die. Sitting at the bed with a halo at your head, was it all a disguise like junior high? Where everything was fiction, future and prediction. Now, where am I, my fading supply? Did you get enough love, my little dove? Why do you cry? And I'm sorry I left, but it was for the best, though it never felt right. My little Versailles.
The Anbernic 405M. Oh, it's like $300. It's more than twice the price.
My star in the sky. Such a funny thought.
One of the best deals in gaming for the past year has been the Anbernic RG35XX. It took all of the best parts of the Miyoo Mini, made them bigger, and most importantly, made them available. The RG35XX plays anything from Game Boy all the way up to PS1 with fantastic emulation quality and great firmware options.
So I've been playing through Sonic Adventure 2 on my 35XX SP, and I really didn't think that using a D-pad instead of an analog stick was going to be a big deal, but it actually does make the game way harder to control. Sonic doesn't move straight. He moves a little to the left. Refining the movements is really hard. You have to kind of tap your way over to the angle you want. It's a clunky mess, but so is Sonic Adventure 2, so it's okay. Anbernic just loves their H700 CPU and their new-ish Linux firmware. There are now a litany of devices in their XX series that use this same exact architecture. The only difference is really their configuration. The best one is the 35XX SP because of the clamshell form factor. I wouldn't consider myself a clamshell guy, but the convenience of being able to just close the lid, put it to sleep, and throw it in your pocket or just throw it in your bag without having to worry about putting it in a case or breaking the screen or anything is a really nice feature.
Yeah.
My biggest gripe with it is having the ability to play 3D games, but not having the ability to control those 3D games with a thumbstick. But don't you worry. Anbernic has released yet another device with the same exact architecture, but this time, it's got a thumbstick. Wow. This is the RG40XXV. The V stands for vertical. Usually I'd like a nice vertical console. I like the original Game Boy form factor, but that already exists in the same platform with the same internal. And it's been out for a while. The big difference here is the screen. It's 4 inches instead of 3.5, which I've learned since my last video is why it's called the 35XX and the 40XX. That's the screen size. It must be really hard to name tech products because everyone sucks at it. The other big difference is the singular thumbstick, which is very nice to have for some of these 3D games, or it would be if it worked the way a thumbstick should work. It does not. What is the point of this one? I really don't understand how they keep releasing these. I think they struck gold with this architecture that they have. I do like the XX series. I just wish they would slow down. Only release these things when they're significantly different from each other. Maybe QA test them a little bit more. Although the problems with this are so glaringly obvious, I don't even think a QA test is necessary. Quality is better than quantity, right? How many of these do we need? Especially when we already have a vertical one that I like better.
So you just like, what doesn't work about it, I wonder.
Mr. Wolf, I have to say, I'm pretty impressed by this resume.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
But one thing we
Oh
did
my
find when we
God.
were doing the background check was your fan page of Conker's Bad Fur Day from 2001.
Oh, okay. Well, is there a problem with that?
Oh, no, it's not a problem at all. But in 2012, we found your Tumblr page with fan fiction of the flower of Conker's Bad Fur Day. And then in 2013, you wrote more fan fiction of the sunflower. And then in 2015, you had 2 different posts.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna keep watching this video, but we're gonna get some food going on here right away. I'm just gonna say lunch BRB, and then we are gonna resume watching these emulator videos. Silly robots. That's right. All right, I'll show you what we're eating today. We have the spicy. We've got the spicy Korean beef. We've got the purple cabbage, the peppers on top of rice. We eat rice bowls like probably. Guys, you guys even see that? There we go. There we go. Would you eat this? We have rice bowls almost every week with either chicken or beef. All different cuts, of course. Never gets old. You switch up the vegetables. You switch up the sauce. Then you switch up the... Whoops, sorry, Merle. There's nothing for you. I have no food for you, Merle. Switch up to veg, switch up the sauce, and you got a new rice bowl every week.
About the sunflower, and then in 2016,
I'm not sure what you're talking. I don't have any recollection of that. It's not mine. It couldn't be mine.
Did you know that your personal data is sold online by data brokers? Anyone can buy your personal details and do whatever they want with them. Nobody is stopping them. They could enter for your sensitive information and remove it for you. You can start seeing the effects of this removal in just 7 days, and they'll continue to skink in the again. And so far, it's working. Get 20% off of the use
20. There was oh wait, oh I can't seem to find any of it anymore.
Yes, as I was saying, I don't have any recollection of these posts you speak of.
Oh well, I'm well. It was a good thing. It was me. I did. Professional environment. I did. It was me. I did.
All right, bro. Now you're being weird. You know what's weirder than making those posts online is pretending like you made those posts online. Oh, did you want this conference room? I got another meeting at 3:30 with your mom. His mom actually does work here though. She's been great. She loves sunflowers. This plays everything that the other XX devices play, Game Boy and NES, all the way up to N64, Dreamcast, and some PSP games. Not many though. The performance of these devices and how it plays all of these different systems is getting boring to talk about because they're all the same. If you're interested in that at all, just go watch my 35XX SP video. That's a much better device anyway. If you're interested in this particular device, you're probably interested in it because of the ergonomics or the form factor. It is a very pretty device, I'll give it that. It feels a bit cheap, unfortunately. It's deceptively light. I guess that makes sense because it's big, but the internals are the exact same as the other devices. Fortunately, it's comfortable. The buttons feel pretty good. I hear a lot of praise for this D-pad in particular. I actually really like Ampernic's D-pads. They usually nail the design of those. Although, there are some XX devices, like the 35XX Plus, that is prone to misinputs on the D-pad. The 35XX SP has a very, very clicky D-pad, and some people don't like that, but I like it. The D-pad on this V device feels kind of similar to the other Ampernic D-pads. Maybe it's a bit softer, less stiff. It feels fine, but I wouldn't say it's a massive improvement. I don't know where everybody's getting that. However, it looks like it isn't gonna misinput the same way as some of the other Ampernic D-pads. So I guess that's the improvement. Now that all of that's out of the way, let's talk about this terrible thumbstick for the whole rest of the video.
Yeah,
Don't look at the playhead. There is a lot more of the video to go. Physically, it's fine. It's the same Nintendo Switch style thumbstick that all these Chinese manufacturers have been using. Will it drift? Probably eventually. That doesn't concern me though. I'm not going to be using this thing like I would a Nintendo Switch Joy-Con. I'm probably not going to be using the thumbstick all that much comparatively. The issue is that it snaps to cardinal directions. What the f***? What is the point of that? The first thing I did was boot up Sonic Adventure 2 because that was what I was most excited to play on here. I was playing it on my SP and I missed having a thumbstick. This is the same device as the SP, but it has a thumbstick. So it should fix that for me, right? Well, Sonic still doesn't feel like he's moving right. At least with a thumbstick, you can like walk if you need to. You aren't full sending it with each direction you press, but that's not enough. I need to be able to move in any direction that I want. It feels so weird to have to correct my angle in this way.
I want to get on this rail. I should just have to hold straight, right? But if you hold straight, he doesn't go exactly straight. He's going a little to the left. So I have to hit right a couple times. I have to like tweak right. Because I can't just go a little bit diagonal to the right. It's literally the same as having a D-pad. The only difference is I can walk if I want to.